Hello there, I'm Shmuel, and this is the third and final installation, third and final video where I read excerpts from Charlie Kirk's book, Stop in the Name of God, about keeping the Shabbat. Okay. In the chapter where Charlie explains about the health benefits of keeping Shabbat, he writes near the end of the chapter, okay. So when God delivers Israel and gives them the Sabbath, he isn't just instituting a religious holiday. He is declaring a new identity. You are no longer slaves. You are mine. And because you are mine, you don't live like the nations. You don't grind 7 days a week. You don't build your life on anxiety and exhaustion. You stop. You breathe. You remember. And in remembering, you resist. The Sabbath, then, is a political act. It is a weekly declaration of allegiance, not to Pharaoh, not to empire, not to the machine, but to God. And he writes the name of the Hebrew God, which I will not say because I am Jewish, but he writes the name. You cannot serve two masters. You cannot simultaneously live by grace and by quotas. The Sabbath draws a line. It divides those who are free from those still in chains. And Moses in Deuteronomy wants the new generation to understand this deeply. He is speaking to those who never knew Egypt firsthand. These were wilderness-born children. They hadn't felt the sting of the lash. But Moses insists, remember, don't forget what it was to be a slave. Don't forget how God rescued you. Because the moment you forget, you'll start to live like slaves again. Or worse, you'll begin to act like Pharaoh. It's amazing, amazing words of wisdom that Charlie wrote. Just amazing. Okay. I say Charlie as if I never got to meet him, and I will never get to meet him, unfortunately. Okay, he writes here, when we sleep on the Sabbath, we echo Jesus's posture in the storm. We say, with our bodies and breath, God is in control. I am not. I can rest. And he means the storm. He writes before about the storm from the book in Mark. There's a story of the storm. I think it was in the Kinneret. I'm not sure. Anyway, let's go on. Oh, I talked about this a little bit in the previous video. You cannot hear the still small voice of God when you are running on fumes, right? This is a great irony. Never has the world had more technology to aid rest. Memory foam mattresses, sleep apps, white noise machines. Yet never have we been more exhausted. We are surrounded by the machinery of rest, but we've lost the theology behind it. Sabbath is the answer. Not merely a day off, but a sacred rhythm, a return to Eden, a protest against Egypt, a recalibration of our humanity. And the center of this day must not just be, not, again, and at the center of this day must not, and at the center of this day must be not just silence or prayer, but sleep, true, trusting sleep that declares, my life is in his hands. Sorry about that. I'm like, it's kind of late. Excuses. I can give you excuses. It's not me, it's you. You just imagined it. I didn't just stutter like a imbecile. You just imagined it. Or maybe the floor is kind of crooked. So maybe I had a long week or a long month or a long year or a long life or something. I don't know, but it's not my fault. Just kidding. Anyway, on and on we go. Next chapter, chapter 8. It's called Melacha, Eved, and Your Dog. Interesting enough. And he writes here, tucked into the heart of the command is a small but powerful clause. Your livestock must also rest. This is no throwaway line. It reveals a divine concern for the non-human world, for creatures who cannot speak, but who, like us, are made by God. Long before modern conversations about animal welfare emerged, God was writing concern for creatures into the fabric of his moral law. The Sabbath testifies that rest is not just a human right, but a creation-wide principle. This should inform how we think about dominion, stewardship, and compassion. To treat animals as mere tools or machines is to ignore the gentle command of the Creator who made space for their renewal too. And I'll add, I think he writes it here too, that for that time it was very revolutionary to give animals rights. I mean, humans didn't almost have rights, so let alone animals. But in the command itself, and I read in the Ten Commandments. Of course, I read it many times, but I didn't really I didn't pay much attention to because it's written like give rest to yourself, to your slaves, to your and to your livestock, right? To everyone, right? But what Charlie wrote is very smart. It's very sharp vision of this. To your livestock is very revolutionary to that time, and it really shows that the Creator cares about all His creation, and that we must take care of all living beings. And Shabbat is not only for humans; it's also for animals. They also receive a day of rest. It's amazing. It's amazing. It's great. What the Bible gave to the West was not just a story, but a structure, a framework in which the dignity of man, the necessity of virtue, and the sacredness of work could all harmonize. And this is a quote from Mangal Wadi, a book by Mangal Wadi, which Charlie quotes. As Mangal Wadi so rightly insists, the Bible built the world we now enjoy, not through domination, but through transformation. It took something the world despised, work, and made it sacred. It took people the world discarded, the laborers, and called them priests. And it took cultures trapped in fatalism and taught them to hope, to build, and to bless. And that's why the Sabbath matters. It doesn't diminish work, it dignifies it by setting its limits. It says, work hard, but remember, you are not God. It anchors our ambition in humility. It sacrifices our sweat with grace. Humility is so important, especially in our time where everything is like me, narcissism, likes, how many likes I get, what cars you drive, whatever, how cash you have in your pockets and stuff like that. It's that the culture it's too much. There needs to be a balance. This is what I'm saying, right? There needs to be a balance. I'm not saying go to the other place and be like a monk or whatever. No, but we have to have a balance. Don't be a pig. Don't. I'm sorry. No disrespect to pigs, right? But don't be a swine. Don't. This all likes. This all me. You go on Facebook or whatever. It's all. I got this. I did this. Look at my life. It's so great. Well, come on, man. And like people inject steroids, and then the guy 50 years old, 60, whatever, and he's like a bodybuilder, and wow, and everybody's like wow, and like I have no problem with it, but at least tell people the truth, right? Why? Because then young people who work their asses off and really train hard, but then they don't reach that, and they say, what's wrong with me? Like, why am I not, you know what I mean? This is just one thought. I'm sorry, it's not exactly related to the book exactly, but my point is humility. I mean, we're kind of losing this in society, right? It's so important because also without humility, people think they know too much, and we don't know anything. I'm not going to go into the whole thing about Hoffman and that we don't even see reality. Like everything is an illusion. Our brain, like we see things that help us survive in this world or whatever. We don't even see reality as it is, right? Everything is Maya. Everything is an illusion, and yet people think they know something. We don't know anything. I mean, everything we have is from our, thoughts or from our senses and stuff like that. We're so limited, and people also sometimes forget that we all die. And like some people are so overconfident and stuff like that. They just forget their flesh and blood. It's kind of crazy. This illusion this matrix, it's too much. It's too much. We need to have that balance. We need to shift back, not crazy back to not moderation, but balance. Okay. This idea was absolutely radical in the ancient world. In the surrounding pagan cultures, animals were either deified, as in Egypt, or brutalized. The notion that animals should be granted rest or humane treatment would have seemed absurd. And yet, the fourth commandment specifically says, on it, the Sabbath, you shall not do any work, you or your son, etc., or your livestock. Exodus 20:10. God mandated rest not just for man, but for animals. This alone would have been shocking to surrounding nations. And the Bible's regard for animal welfare goes far behind the Decalogue. In Deuteronomy 25:4, we read, You shall not muzzle an ox when it is treading out the grain. A command both practical and compassionate. Proverbs 20:10 declares, whoever is righteous has regard for the life of his beast, but the mercy of the wicked is cruel. Even in the laws of warfare, God commands restraint. When you besiege a city, you shall not destroy trees. You may eat from them, but you shall not cut them down. Deuteronomy 20:19. These weren't environmental slogans. They were God-ordained limits designed to foster respect for life. And yes, there are many. I'm saying there are many many phrases in the Bible, um, and in the Jewish law that that say you have to treat animals kindly, and you know, you have to, even in the when you kill them for food, the kosher laws, um, you have to do it with the minimum suffering possible and stuff like that. And about this point, when we look at things, we should looking at things in a historical eye. We need to try to put ourselves in the context of that era, right? People sometimes forget. They read the Bible or a book from a long time ago, and they read it as the way they think now in this culture now, and it's not the way to think about it. You have to know the context. How was life back then? Like, what did people have? How did they live? Like, what were the laws? What were the norms back then? And as Kirk states, this was revolutionary. This is not just some obscure law. So this is part of the Ten Commandments, the basic, the heart of Judaism, the heart of the laws of our religion. To treat animals with kindness, to give them a day of rest. It's amazing. It's really amazing. Oh, this divine declaration was revolutionary. In an age when kings were gods, slaves were property, and women were afterthoughts, the God of Israel declared that everyone, regardless of status, was entitled to rest. That idea, though seemingly simple, was radical in its time, and it became the theological seed from which the Western understanding of rights and equality would grow. The Sabbath was not just about rest. It was a reordering of society under a just and merciful God. It reminded Israel that they too had been slaves in Egypt, and the power must never be divorced from empathy. This moral foundation laid in the wilderness at Sinai would echo centuries later in the words of our founders. When Jefferson wrote that all men are created equal, he was tapping into a truth much older than 1776. Truth. In fact, owning a servant in ancient Israel came with significant responsibilities and legal obligations. According to the Babylonian Talmud, Tractate Kiddushim, whoever acquires a servant acquires a master. That was not sarcasm, it was moral clarity. If you took in a servant, you were required to treat him with compassion, fairness, and generosity. You had to provide rest, protection, eventual release, and even material goods upon his departure. Deuteronomy 15:13-14. If you injured him, you had to free him. If he ran away, you couldn't pursue him. The system was structured not to benefit the master, but to protect the vulnerable in a fallen world. In that light, the Sabbath was not merely a day of worship. It was a rebuke of tyranny. It told every Israelite, you are not God, and no one else is your beast of burden. The biblical witness does not ignore the reality of sin and exploitation. It confronts it, contains it, and then in Christ defeats it. From the covenantal servant in ancient Israel to the spiritual brotherhood proclaimed in the New Testament, the arc of Scripture is clear. Slavery, while regulated in a fallen world, is not a biblical idea. The Bible's message was never to preserve the status quo, but to transform it. One heart, one home, one institution at a time. And the dignity extended to the Evid on the Sabbath was not an anomaly. It was a foreshadowing of the freedom that Christ would one day offer to all, slave and free alike. The Old Testament does not morally endorse slavery. It regulates it. And that is a very important point to all people who barely read anything from the Bible but want to attack it. You know, so many people just for the sake of their ideology, or for their political ideology, they attack Jews and the Bible and stuff like that, and then they read some phrase out of context. The same with the Talmud, right? The Talmud, it's people read phrases and they don't know what they're talking about. They don't know what they're talking about. So again, the context really matters, and what Charlie says is truth. It's just truth. Again, I'll read this. The Old Testament does not morally endorse slavery. It regulates it. And of course, you can say, so why not free all slaves? So why didn't Moses say, instead of regulating it, Moses could have said no more slavery? I don't know. I'm not going to give you excuses personally or give you an answer. I can think of answers. For instance, maybe it wasn't practical to do that at the time because the whole system in the region was different, and just maybe the people wouldn't accept it. I don't know. I can't, I don't know. But what I do know is it's a huge step in the right direction, a huge step. It's a very, and it must have been controversial at the time. The idea is very, very revolutionary. The rights that were given. Anyway, we're reaching the end. And this is from the book, from the chapter, Are Christians Bound to the Sabbath? So Kirk gives like some theories for and some theories against. He gives like a whole picture, a wide picture, not only his opinion. Mark 2:27-28. And he said to them, the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. So the Son of Man is Lord even of the Sabbath. This oft-quoted statement by Jesus is more radical than it first appears. When he says the Sabbath was made for man, he uses the Greek anthropos, meaning humankind in general, not Jews in particular. He is affirming that the Sabbath was created as a gift for all humanity, not a burden imposed on a single nation. Okay, it's very interesting. Kirk goes into a lot of things. Really, his analysis is very deep and very wide. And I mean, read the book, man and woman. Just read the book. And he goes on to say that the moral law still applies under the new covenant. He says the Sabbath belongs to the moral framework of God's covenant. not as a ladder to earn salvation, but as a mirror that reflects his holiness and order. John Wesley emphasized that every part of the moral law stands firm and is to be observed. That includes the Sabbath. Yeah, I mean, and who are any I don't care, theologians, Christians, whatever. Who are you to say that a commandment, one of the 10 commandments, is no longer valid? You have no right. You have no moral right to do that. Because also, God does not change his mind. Like, it's not like a human being. God knows the past, the present, the future is everything. Everything is in the now for God, right? So when he gave the 10 Commandments, it wasn't like, oh, I'll give it in a few, like 100 years or in 1,000 years, just don't do it. Do something else. No, it's not. It doesn't work like that. People, come on. In his book, The Holy Sabbath, Pink critiques those who claim that the moral law was abolished in Christ. He writes, are we to suppose that the commandment, thou shalt not kill, is moral, but remember the Sabbath day is ceremonial? The absurdity of such a position should be self-evident. The fourth commandment belongs to the same unchanging law of God. He viewed the 10 commandments as a coherent moral unit. To break one was to undermine the whole. That's what Kirk says about Pink's view. Right? And then he writes, so are we bound to the Sabbath? Are we, he means Christians. I've come to understand the sacred, complex question as a Christian, a father, and a man trying to walk to the truth. The Sabbath is God ordained. It was blessed and sanctified at creation, written in stone at Sinai, honored by Christ during his earthly ministry, and whether in principle or practice, respected by the early church. At its core, the Sabbath is a standing celebration of the world's beginning, a weekly reminder that creation has meaning, that rest is holy, and that we are not slaves to our labor, our devices, or our ambitions. Whether you believe it is legally binding or not, it remains a divinely instituted rhythm. And to ignore it entirely is to disregard something God declared good. Amazing. Amazing. Just a few more for the road. Oh, this is interesting for anyone who... We learn in Exodus 33:14 that God says this to Moses, my presence will go with you and I will give you rest. Pause. I want to correct, this is actually not correct. This is a mistranslation. And the more I see many mistranslations, and it's amazing for me that in the 21st century, still many things are like misunderstood in the English Bible when they read in English. So here, my presence will go with you and I will give you rest. The Hebrew is Ani anche otcha, the last part of it. So anche otcha is I will lead, show you the way or lead you on. Like it's the same word if you have someone if your professor is the one who if you have to write a thesis, your professor is your manche. He's showing you the way. He's leading on. He's leading the right. He's your lead, whatever. So the whoever translated it mistook this for the word menucha. For it sounds the same, it looks the same, and that's why. And menucha is rest, right? But it's not the meaning, the actual meaning. So it should be read. My presence will go with you, and I will be your guide, or something like that. Don't something like that. But whoever translated it wrote, and I will give you rest. It's actually not at all. That's not the meaning at all. Now, in this particular phrase, it's not that important, but there are other places maybe that there are misunderstandings. For instance, it reminds me of that famous drawing by Leonardo and others that drew Moses with horns. And I'm sure some of you know this famous paintings. And why did they do that? Because one of the phrases in the Torah says that when Moses was with God face to face, as they say, or the closest possible to the divinity, when he went down from the mountain, his face was glowing from light. He had light from his face. That's the phrase, and he had to put some face covering because it was too, like, it made people too. It was too off-putting for men, for people, right? So in Hebrew, keren or is a beam of light, keren, and it's written karan or panav, karan, okay. But the same combination of letters, keren, means this thing of the animal. I forgot the right. So it was mistranslated, misunderstood that because Moses was in the presence of divinity, he came down with horns, with horns on his head. It's ridiculous. It wasn't. It's not. That's not the meaning at all. It was his face was full of light. It was beaming light. But that's just a famous example of. And it's amazing to me that there's still so many errors in translation. Okay. Okay, a few more. God built creation before he built a cathedral. The first temple was a garden, and it still preaches. A slow walk in nature on the Sabbath without earbuds or a destination is one of the most powerful ways to reconnect to God's voice. This isn't exercise. This is worship through wonder. That's very nice. And by the way, there are also walking meditations. There are all kinds of forms of meditations that you can walk and meditate, and this is it's so important because with all the, like Charlie says, with all the phones that we have and the technology and AI and being connected all the time, to take a break and try to connect to yourself, to your inner self, and through that to the divine. It's so important. And Shabbat actually could save us. Could actually save us from this the full entering into the matrix. The matrix. Anyway, near the end here. So that. This shalom that we speak of is fundamentally different from the peace promised by Buddhism or Eastern meditation. Eastern philosophy often centers on detachment, emptying the mind, suppressing the desire, dissolving the ego. The goal is often nirvana, a state beyond pain, beyond self, beyond the world. To achieve this, practitioners are taught to empty their thoughts and embrace nothingness. But biblical shalom is not about detachment. It is about connection. It is not the loss of self, but the healing and restoration of self. God does not ask us to disappear into a void, but to be known, loved, and transformed in His presence. Beautiful. Then this chapter 13 is conclusion. And Charlie writes a little bit personal about his life. When I was growing up, I used to sprain my ankle frequently. Sometimes it would prevent me from playing basketball, which drove me crazy. The doctor would always tell me, only time will solve it. You need to let it heal. Our adherence to the Sabbath is not so different. We can throw money, therapists, cold plunges, saunas, red light therapy, supplements, IV drips, and meditation apps to our problems. But fundamentally, what we need to do is stop and allow our wounds to heal. We are stepping into a future where artificial intelligence will know better than you know yourself. Will know you better than you know yourself. It will finish your sentences, anticipate your cravings, tell you when you sleep, and even suggest what to believe. That is terrifying. It will organize your calendar, manage your inbox, write your papers, select your music, and eventually even raise your children unless you push back. The days of you being able to think for yourself are coming to an end. Your capacity to be a sovereign conscious being will fade unless you mightily resist the pull by forcibly unplugging. AI is not coming, it's here. And with it comes a strange paradox. We have never been more connected, yet never more detached from what matters. With every technological leap, we grow more efficient but less human, more informed but less wise. We scroll past sunsets. We forget our neighbors' names. We ignore the sound of silence because we've trained our minds to fear boredom and our hearts to fear stillness. And now we're being told the next frontier is to merge with the machine, to upload, enhance, and accelerate. But here's the question no one seems to be asking. At what cost? We are quickly approaching a moment when attention will be the rarest commodity on earth. Not oil, not gold, not even data. Pure, uninterrupted human attention. The ability to be fully present, to look someone in the eyes without glancing down at the screen, to hear God's voice without a notification dinging in your pocket, to play with your kids without the tug of an email or algorithm whispering your name. That will be the new luxury. And unless we build a discipline around guarding it, we will lose it entirely. Enter the Sabbath. The Sabbath is not just a nice idea. It's not just a rest day for the religious or the nostalgic. The Sabbath is God's answer to a culture spinning out of control. It is His ancient rhythm of sanity, planted like an anchor in a world swept away by currents of chaos. 6 days we work, build, create, engage. On the seventh day we stop, but not because we're weak. We stop because we're human. We don't rest because we're lazy. We rest because we're obedient. The Sabbath is the line. It is a place where we say enough. We will not sacrifice wonder on the altar of efficiency. We will not hand over our families to screens or let technology parent our children. We will not allow worship to become another background task. The Sabbath reclaims one day from the machine and gives it back to God. It teaches our children that there is something better than constant entertainment, something more meaningful than digital connection. If we do not draw that line boldly and consistently, we are not just compromising our future, we are forfeiting it. The Sabbath is our chance to say, this far, no further. So while the world keeps sprinting, downloading, upgrading, and merging, let the people of God be the ones who pause, who breathe, who say, this day belongs to the Lord. Let us be the ones who shut it all down, not out of fear, but out of faith. Not because we reject progress, but because we know that without margin, progress becomes a God, and gods without grace always destroy. None of this is an abstraction. You can make the definite choice to follow the mold of how God designed you. Failing to honor the Sabbath is quietly to wage war on your own design, and the consequences of that are all around us. I personally have been transformed by adhering to this ancient practice, this gift from God. Knowing about the Sabbath is helpful but limited if you don't apply it in your life. The gift of the Sabbath is right in front of you. Embrace it, seize it. And my call to action for you is very clear. Stop in God's name. This is Charlie with his daughter and his wife. Shabbat Shalom. Be good.